All right, everyone, while our colleagues continue to trickle in, we can get started. My name is Amanda Colligan. I recognize many of your names and faces from previous sessions from the PLC series, but just a little bit of background about me. I sit in the Department of Higher Education in DHE, and I am an analyst for the P20W Data Hub, which is our state longitudinal data system. And early college fits in right there because our goal is really to understand from preschool through the workforce how our students navigate our system and how we can understand our best practices in Massachusetts public education. I know I have colleagues from DESE, from NS for Ed here as well, but my co-host today is Renee. Do you want to say good morning, Renee?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Renee. I'm the lead fellow working with Kristen and Becca and also Amanda. Looking forward to today's session. It's going to be a good one.
Great. And our colleagues from DESE and NS for Ed are here as well to help us answer questions that come up through our session today. So please feel free to put questions in the chat, and then we have time aside at the end set aside for questions too. So. Excuse me. This morning, we're thinking about how together we can tackle the challenges of early college data collection. And our session is meant to help guide both program and our data folks with clear guidelines for reporting purposes, as well as to really understand what we are doing on the state level to streamline and hopefully improve reporting for the future. So we're talking about where we're going. We're talking about what data looks like right now and some guidance on reporting as we are heading, I know we're in or just ending a SIMS cycle right now, but thinking about end of year reporting too. And then also we're going to look at some unique examples of student profiles and strategies on how to report those students. We're going to talk to our colleagues about what each of us are doing on our campuses or in our institutions, and then we're going to leave some time for questions and answers. So in order to think about where we are going, we really need to dig into where we are now. We know that our current reporting mechanisms with our manual tracker, where our programs are reporting enrollment to the early college team, isn't quite working. And we can see that just from this one piece. These are data from fall 2021, where individual program reporting in the manual tracker gave us a total of 4,398 students, and only 3,900 students were reported in SIMS. So that difference of 472 students is nearly 11%, which leaves us with a lot of questions. We've worked with many of you individually, as well as looked internally at the state level to analyze these data, to look at our systems and think about why these numbers might be so far off. We're thinking about when and how we should share data with other constituencies as a result of some of the inconsistencies we see, what the challenges might be for each data submission, what, excuse me, and what challenges there are in gathering these data. Ultimately, again, we really took some time to reflect internally, thinking about our current reporting mechanisms that we are currently already required for you all, and how we can make this process easier for our programs. So our little gap analysis here is a quick summary of what our internal reflection has been and some steps we have and are currently taking to try to make this process easier. We know that currently we have these manual trackers and we have some disagreement in that data that's reported on the K-12 level in SIMS and SCS and the post-secondary level in our AIRS systems. We also don't currently have the capability for our independent higher ed partners to submit detailed data. At the state level, we know that at your institutions, at the state level, sorry, and as well as at your institutions, we know that we all have limited capacity and want to be really intentional in the data we collect so that it's not overburdensome. And in order to do this, we are triangulating lots of data sources and doing a lot of kind of patchwork analysis. In order to bridge this gap and think about where we need to go, we hope that you have noticed that at the state level, our staff and analysts at DESE and DHE have been working together really closely to coordinate our data analysis, to understand the data submissions, process and cycles, as well as communications. We've collaboratively analyzed the past few years of data to see how it's possible that we can use our current reporting mechanisms to get the data that we need in a timely manner. We're also exploring our technical systems. I've learned so much about technology in the last few months as a result, because as you all can imagine, sometimes those technical systems don't talk to each other. And we want them to do that. We need them to do that. And so that process of analysis and getting timely feedback to our partners and out to stakeholders has been really manual, and we want that to be better in a future state. So all of this work is leading toward our goal of using our current systems of reporting more effectively and ensuring that we have better data going in order that to make it so that we have better data coming out of the system. Our work is also leading us to understand how our independent higher ed partners can submit data through some of these same mechanisms for increased access to analysis and benchmarking. With clear reporting guidelines in place and an expectation that we're going to use these systems rather than any manual trackers in the future, we can use the data we currently have to support you in our programs rather than collecting additional data from you, and that's the goal. Our plan includes using past enrollment data to plan and project better for the future. This is going to help us with budgetary projections on the state level, as well as really an understanding of program scaling and what's working. Our goal is to use reported SIMS data as the source of truth for who our early college students are. And we're going to get more in the weeds about that data collection in a bit. But with clean data to help us identify things like which early college students are not yet taking college coursework, or which students are taking classes on the high school campus versus the higher ed campus. All of these data are also currently being analyzed to create a payment formula that will help to reimburse our partners on a timely basis, on a regular schedule, and with payment as early as possible in the academic year. We know that it has been incredibly challenging to be reimbursed months after services have been provided. We're hearing that feedback, and we're trying to use these systems to inform that process. And finally, using these systems will also ensure that we're gathering consistent, detailed, and accurate data on our programs and students, which help us to develop reports, dashboards, and that cycle of reporting and outreach to support you in the continuous improvement of your programs, to hopefully get you all some tools to help you think about how your students are doing and how we can continue to improve. So I may be taking this metaphor a bit too literally, but our target, see what I did there, is for easier, accurate, and timely reporting on the part of our programs. We hope to accomplish this again through clear reporting guidance, much like what we'll be doing today, and creating some tools to support that reporting. Outreach and support from the early college teams at DESE and DHE, which will include the opportunity to reflect on your data submissions, identify any questions or inaccuracies, and really for us to collect best practices and kind of what's working for our partners along the way. Through these mechanisms, we also hope to continue this virtuous cycle of feedback and analysis in order to build on our community of practice that we've developed here. We want to ensure that there are opportunities for you to review reports or dashboards that we have created to help us understand what would be helpful and important for you, and for us to bring together our partners to, again, just create this community of support. Now, in order to do this, our first piece is some guidance around reporting at all levels, and we're going to take this target metaphor a bit further. So for our K-12 reporters, you really hold the key in terms of identifying who our early college students are. It's not only important that the correct students are identified as early college, but also that you share that list of students and those SAS IDs with your higher ed partners. And we're going to get into higher ed reporting in a moment. But ultimately, all of our analysis and therefore funding and reporting hinges on the identification of early college students in SIMS, in DOE 45 here, high quality career pathways program type. So early college students here should be coded as O2, whether they are new or continuing early college students. And again, that's really the key to all of our reporting. In addition to identifying early college students in SIMS, you'll want to include the 4-digit code for the partner institution for which the student is currently or will be taking college coursework. So that 4-digit code and there's a list in the SIMS handbook, identifies that institution. And I just want to say, I know that several of our high school partnerships have 2 designated higher ed partners. So for DOE 46 here, we would ask that you default to the community college unless that student is only taking courses at the 4-year institution. And we're going to kind of hammer this home with some examples later, but just remember to default to the community college if you have 2 partners. On the right side of the screen here, we're thinking about SCS reporting as well. And these are other important data elements that really can tell us a lot about our early college students and their course taking behavior in high school. Another significant piece for programming and analysis is SCS 09, which is the course level. So if a student is taking a course for college credit, it's important that these are marked as 04 or coded as 04, post-secondary credit. We know that we've been hammering this point home for a while, so excuse me if we sound like a broken record, but we can still see some important discrepancies in what the reporting data that we're seeing so far. And remember that DESE also counts course level 04 as another advanced category. And as always, if you have questions throughout our discussion today or anytime, you can reach out to the early college team here. And then finally, in SCS, SCS 03, the school program ID number helps us identify the course location. So if that course is taking place on the college campus, the code should be the CLBR plus, that same 4-digit code for the institution that you entered in SIMS, right? So this may differ if a student is taking college coursework on multiple campuses, but that 4-digit code for the college is going to be at the end of that code if it is on the college campus. If a student is taking an online college course, that's when you will enter this CLBRV CLG. And there are codes in SCS in the handbook. And I think Niall, thank you, put the link in that for those in the chat. But there is a separate code for online coursework at the high school level as well. So you just want to make sure you're looking at the college online code. Again, we'll have some time for specific questions later on, and we'll be looking at specific examples of students to report. So we're going to come back to this. But I just want to, quickly also think about our higher ed reporting. So on the college level, we currently only have the ability, as I've said, for our public colleges and universities to report data in AIRS, but we are working on a progress for our independent college partners. So please know that's happening and we haven't forgotten about you. For AIRS reporting, there are a few key variables that enable us to identify our early college students and understand how many credits they are taking. So first, as I mentioned, on the high school side, it's imperative that you have matching SAS IDs for your students. And that I know requires a lot of communication and coordination between partners there, between the high school and the college or university. On the college side, we want to not only make sure that those SAS IDs are entered into AIRS for those students, but that it's the correct SAS ID and again aligns with high school reporting. We do know, and again, we'll see this a bit later, that not all early college students are taking post-secondary coursework. And so that means that not all early college students will appear in AIRS each term. However, there should be some alignment for those students who are taking post-secondary coursework between SIMS and AIRS. And that SAS ID is a real key piece of that. But we will be using SIMS to identify our core group of early college students. It's also important for data triangulation and consistency that in AIRS, we are identifying those students taking college level coursework in STU 077. So if that student is early college, again, from a designated early college program, as opposed to another dual enrollment program, we want to include that code 1 for early college students in STU 077. It's also important for data validation purposes that you ensure that the course's high school, that the student's high school as listed in your student information system and then reported in AIRS is correct. And again, part of an early college state designated partnership. I know from my experience on campuses with early college programs, as well as in talking to many of you, that many of our campuses had programs that may have been called early college or other kind of dual or concurrent enrollment programs. But remember, when we're talking about early college reporting, we're talking about designated partnership. And so if a student is identified as early college, but their high school is not aligned with one of our designated partnerships, you run the risk of receiving an error in AIRS submission. And if you have ever submitted AIRS, you know that that's not fun. Error checks are not great, but they're there for a purpose to make sure that our data is as clean and accurate as possible. And then finally, for AIRS, there are no specific requirements or differences in the course and enrollment files for early college students, but we know that these files are going to be our single source of truth for identifying the number of college credits that our early college students are enrolled in. We know from SIMS that we can identify whether students are in post-secondary or taking post-secondary coursework, but we don't know the number of college credits. And that number of college credits is also the basis for any IHE payments and reimbursements. It's important that this is as complete and as accurate as possible. So before we go into the interesting stuff and get a little bit further in the weeds, I just want to wrap up the reporting piece and reiterate why these data are important. Beyond just simple and accurate reporting, which as a data person, I know is very important, but identifying early college students clearly helps us understand the scale and funding, as well as gives us a clear idea who our comparison groups are. We really want to see whether all of our programming, all of our support of early college students are making a difference in these students' outcomes. Identifying the higher ed institution helps us to ensure accurate reporting for credit reimbursement, as well as get each of our programs more detailed data back on scale and outcomes for each of your partnerships. Course enrollment data beyond credits help us understand our early college students' course taking behavior, as well as analyze course success outcomes. This will help us think about transferability of these courses as students matriculate or transfer to other IHEs. And then finally, our course credits are the foundation of our payments to our IHEs and a key part of understanding how close we are to meeting our goals, where students complete at least 12 credits while in high school and transferring those credits effectively. All right, so our next few slides are going to go through some detailed, unique student profiles and how we might report them. But I want to pause here for any questions or reactions. I saw a question in the chat about STU 077, and I will take a look at the data dictionary to triple check that I haven't screwed something up, which is completely possible. So I will get back to that question from Susan. So thank you.
I think I'm using no and yes for STU 077, and then institutional research will transfer that to a number. So I think that I am sure you are correct.
Thank you, but I will double check too, and I will get back to you when we pause in a couple of minutes. But thank you for raising that question.
Conversation I had recently, and they switch it to a number. They make it easier for me. Thank you.
No worries. There's a lot of these codes flying around, so absolutely fine that we're jumbling them all in our brains.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions, comments, and thoughts from any of my colleagues on the call if I've missed anything?
I have something kind of minor. First of all, thank you, Amanda, for the presentation. I think it's so exciting to see some of these questions that programs have posed being tackled, and try to really be working together as a team across agencies to figure this out, because it's complicated. I did have a question earlier in the semester, and I think it's one of those questions that we'll tackle as this unfolds and rolls out. It was around, there are some post-secondary credits that early college students may attain that are ineligible for early college funding. Either they're already paid for through Perkins or another source. Typically technical credits, I think is, and I think because they're technical credits, there'll be ways to flag them. But that's just something that we will add to the challenges as we continue to explore the different ways in which we capture the data and use it for things like funding and evaluation. So I just wanted to note that I know that question's been asked, and it's on our list that I'll share with Amanda and work closely with our team to tackle when we get there. But for now, we appreciate through the manual trackers kind of having that distinction made. And that will also go true, we'll also probably provide more specific guidance around the 5th year pilot programs in that 13th year. There'll also probably be a special condition on those as well.
Thanks, Kristen. All right, well, so we have, so that we actually contextualize all of those words that I just said and all of that guidance, we wanted to come up with a couple of example students using potentially, these are not real students, but we think that they are students who could potentially exist in some of our partnerships. So we just want to walk through this really quickly and think about and highlight the important pieces as we report these students. So this student example is a 9th grade student at Durfee High School, and Durfee is partnered with both Bristol and Bridgewater State. So this 9th grade student has been accepted into the early college program, but is not currently taking early college coursework. So I think this is an example that hopefully hits home for many of our programs. And so for this student, they would, in DOE 045, would still be identified as early college. In DOE 46, we would identify Bristol Community College as their higher ed partner, because again, we're going to default to the community college if our partnerships include 2 higher ed institutions. In SCS 09, this student is not currently taking any college coursework, so they are actually a student who will not have any records that are coded as 04. Their other codes will depend on their level of coursework, but for all intents and purposes will look like any other student who's not in early college. And then SCS 03 is not going to contain any courses with the CLBR code because these are not on the college campus. They're not taking post-secondary credit. They're not taking courses on the college campus. And then this student in AIRS, student will not appear in AIRS because they are not taking any post-secondary credit. So this is a relatively straightforward example, but again, that little star is something to pay attention to. And that will be, again, we're going to default to the community college when we identify the institution the student is enrolled in. Student number 2 here, a 12th grade Neshoba Valley Technical High School student, and Neshoba Valley is partnered with Middlesex Community College. There we go. Sorry. This student is continuing as early college, so they were enrolled in 11th grade as well. They're currently taking all of their courses on the Middlesex Community College campus, so all of their coursework is post-secondary. So again, in DOE 45 and SIMS, they're going to appear as early college. Their partner is Middlesex Community College, so DOE 46 is going to be that unique code for Middlesex, which is 3554. For this student, our SCS 09 is relatively easy for each course because all of them are for post-secondary credit. Their SCS 03 codes are going to all be CLBR 3554. Again, that 3554 is the same as in DOE 46. That identifies the higher ed institution. And we are coding these courses that way because the student is taking the courses on the Middlesex campus. In AIRS, for STU 077, right, we're going to identify the student as early college, which is, we're pretty sure, a code of 1. And then in the course and enrollment files in AIRS, they should have 4 course records because they are taking 4 courses. So they will appear in all of those files. All right. Student number 3 here. We have, and these are getting a little bit more complicated on purpose. So if you have questions, please chime in. I see a couple of notes in the chat that I think my colleagues are answering. So thank you. So this student is an 11th grade 11th grader at Framingham High School. Framingham High School is partnered with Mass Bay and Framingham State. This student is taking 2 courses for college credit through Framingham State University, one of which is online. So again, students coded as early college, number 2, code 2 in DOE 45. DOE 46 is something to note here. This student is only enrolled at Framingham State. So that is the institution that we are going to code for 046. We're going to default to the community college only if that student is in both, taking coursework at both institutions, or only the community college. But here, because we know they're only taking courses at Framingham State, we're going to call that out. In SCS 09, only the courses that the student is taking for post-secondary credit will be coded as 04, right? So they might have multiple codes in SCS 09 depending on the course. In SCS 03, for that college course that is online, we will include CLBR VCLG, that college online course code for that course. And then if there is another course on the FSU campus, which we haven't specified here, we're going to add that code that will say it's on the campus. Again, that 3519, coordinating with the code for the institution.
Oh, no.
Yeah. We have a question? No, okay. And then the student will be coded as AIRS in early college, and both of those college courses will appear in the course and enrollment files that Framingham State is going to submit through AIRS. Just want to pause for one more moment. Any questions so far? Thanks, Niall and my DESE colleagues, for answering these questions in the chat. All right. Our last student, we're going really complicated, but we know again that these are likely scenarios that you may face in reporting. This student is an 11th grade Claremont Academy student. Claremont is partnered with Quinsigamond and Worcester State, and they were previously in an innovation pathway. So 11th grade now, they've committed to the early college program. And this student is currently taking some college coursework through both Worcester State and Quinsigamond. So even for SIMS DOE 45, this student is coded as early college, even if previously they were reported as IP. They're early college now, and that's how we're reporting them. In DOE 46, we're going to, again, default to the community college. Even though this student is taking coursework with both institutions, because we can't look at both institutions in this reporting, in this variable, we're going to default to the community college. For her courses that she's taking for post-secondary credit, they will be coded as 04 in SCS 09. The course location in SCS 03 will be that 3714 code if it is on the Quinsigamond campus, or the 3524, which is on the Worcester State campus, if those courses are taught on the college campuses. And again, those codes, I promise I didn't just make them up, and I'm not trying to be overly difficult, but those are available in the SCS handbook. So this student is going to appear in AIRS. They should be coded as early college as a code of 1. And then in each institution, both in Quinsigamond and Worcester State, this student will be reported in their course and enrollment files. So their course at Worcester State will be reported in their files, and their course at Quinsigamond will be reported in their course and enrollment files. All right, so those are our student profiles. Hopefully those are helpful as you go through reporting. And then I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Renee to bring us to the final piece of our morning discussion.
Yes, thank you so much for those examples. I know personally that was my favorite part of the presentation, to have like an example to go by, but that was a lot of information. So we want to make sure that you all have a chance to discuss this with some of your colleagues who are on the call. We have a couple of questions here for you that you can use to get started for the discussion, but also if you have any lingering questions for anything that was going on in the presentation prior to this, this is also time to discuss that. It looks like we are just about on schedule, so we'll have about 10 minutes to discuss with everyone, and then we will come back. Oh, thank you, Amanda. I was just about to do that. Perfect. The questions are in the chat, so you'll be able to look back with them. And when we all come back together, we will have some time to share out with the group as a whole, and I'll record the questions that you all have too, because it helps us to get as much from you as possible in terms of your experiences so far, your questions, concerns, anything that you have, because you're the ones who experience this on the ground. So I'm going to put us in those breakout rooms, but before we do that, do we have any questions or anything along those lines? All right, so the questions are in the chat. You'll be able to reference them there. You'll be in your room. I'll be sure to give a 2-minute warning, and also a 1 minute before we wrap up. All right, thank you.
So
Welcome back, everyone, too. Thank you for participating. It was really great to jump around to all of the groups and see how deep you all were in discussion. So what we're going to hope to do now is just ask if there's anything you'd like to share out between what you were talking about in your group, or any questions that were lingering after you were discussing either these questions or things from earlier in the presentation. And then we will, after a couple minutes, we will go right into our Q&A so we can maximize that time. But all the group numbers were a little funky, so I may not have the right one. So if you just want to unmute yourself and share, or you can put it in the chat and I can copy and paste it that way too.
I mean, my group 3, we had a few questions around high schools that are innovation pathway and are taking a college course. Are those considered? They would be considered designated, I believe, in our reporting, correct? Even though the funding is going to the high school, how would they be classified?
I can take that on. That's a great question. So the high schools differentiate between designated IP and early college. So a student can't be in both. They need to be in one or the other. They can be, like, you can have IP and early college students in one class together, but the students themselves are designated as IP or early college. So they report on both of those, even though they don't get the higher ed credit or tuition reimbursement for the IP students.
Well, how does the higher ed institution report that student?
At this point, they are not, that I know of, reporting as. That's a great question. They are not currently reporting them in AIRS that I know of. That might be something in the future that we look into, but as of right now, they're just, you would basically the same way they would pull SIMs, they would know which students were in IP, and they could match that with AIRS in terms of those students' SAS numbers showing up, but we haven't built that bridge yet for IP.
Oh,
that's a great question.
Our students are taking a college course this semester, and they're on my report here.
Yeah, so
I need to distinguish what their funding source is, whether it's other CDEP or early college. So I was going to put early college, but I probably shouldn't do that.
no, so these are two separate groups of students. On the higher ed level, there's no indicator in AIRS for an IP student, an innovation pathway student.
But I'd put the other funding source, I assume.
The funding source would be whether it's CDEP or other. Yes, correct. It would not be early college.
Got
yeah,
it. Okay,
correct. But
good.
they would likely appear like in the AIRS side of things, they would likely appear like any other dual or concurrent
Yep.
enrollment program. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, that's good, because I did that wrong. Now I can go back and fix that.
No. Thanks, Susan.
And one other, the other only observation that we had, aside from just closely with the importance of working closely with our institutional researcher, whoever does the AIRS, is just the high schools, just being sure that they're classifying students correctly. That's the struggle, I think, for a lot of us, at least for me.
Yeah, I would venture a guess that the high schools, some high schools probably say the same thing about their higher ed partners. But
Yeah.
I think the key is really communicating
Yeah.
effectively, consistently, and often, especially as for the higher ed folks, as enrollments, right, especially during like an add drop period where students, depending on your process, maybe adding on their own or what have you, like just really communicating between your partners about accurate enrollments. You may need to be reporting that up to week, day to day during some of that add drop period. But I think that the key piece for reporting is really identifying that the students in higher ed that we are reporting as early college are also being reported on the K-12 side as early college, and that you have those SAS IDs that are matched as well.
Yeah.
But thank you for bringing that up, Susan, and your group as well. Thank you all.
We did have another question in the chat, and it's about early college promise students. Can we get early college promise designation for DOE 045?
So my understanding is that all of the students in the early college promise program are previously designated early college students. If that is not the case, you can let me know that, but that was my understanding. So you would continue to report them as designated.
Great. And we had another chat question. Can you clarify how 1 credit courses are counted and reimbursed for higher education? Thank you for bringing that up.
I'll tackle that one. So we have 2 types of 1 credit courses being offered. One is being offered as what I'm going to call pre-early college or pre-innovation pathways, which is really the kind of preparation, typically in 9th grade, where students, maybe even 8th grade, students are exposed to a 1 credit college and career course, but they have not made a commitment to a pathway. So this is really in preparation to share out information about college going and opportunities and careers. And also a lot of our programs use it to, I'm going to use the word market, a pathway options to students. And then at the end of that experience, they may sign on to early college. The only time 1 credit courses can be counted as early college for funding purposes is after a student has signed a program application at the high school. So not necessarily the college enrollment forms, but the program application committing to pursuing a minimum of 12 college credits. So if the family and the student has made that commitment, and we could walk on a campus and they can say, I'm an early college student, then that any courses they take become, any courses they take that are mass transfer or mass core related become eligible for early college funding. If it's just all 9th graders taking that, it is not currently eligible for early college funding. It needs to be funded through a different source. So I hope that answered that question, because it's a question we get a lot. Once a student has enrolled, all of their 04 credits from their entire high school span will be counted. So that 1 credit course that they may have taken as pre-early college will retroactively be counted towards their 12 credit count, because it will look at, by the time they're 12th graders, we'll be looking at all the 04 experiences they've had as a student, if that makes sense.
So Kristen, can I just ask one question about that? Because I asked, because it comes up a lot for us. So for all students at MCC, as part of a graduation criteria, they have to take 3 1 credit courses. They become a bundle.
Okay.
So whether they take them in 9th grade or 12th grade, in order to graduate, they'll need the 3 1 credits. So are you saying that if they take them in 9th, we've never been able to count them? But by 12th grade,
it all depends on when they sign an application. So there's some programs that are 9th grade, high schools have students saying, yes, we're committing to the pathway of 12 college credits, we're ready to sign up. And we have other programs where they're using it as an introduction to pathway options. And then in that case, it's not
Right, all right, so let's just say that they haven't committed, they're learning, so they
Yep.
haven't been able to commit yet. So are you saying in 12th grade, although we can count the credits, the college won't be reimbursed for them?
Not for the one that was taken in 9th grade before they made the decision to pursue the pathway.
Okay, all right,
Once they sign the early college application in high school, and that's on record, then any classes will be funded that meet the criteria. However, the way SCS works and AIRS works is that once that student is identified as an early college student, we are able then to track all credits related to them. So they can get that one credit course that they took prior to enrollment can technically be part of their high school course record. It's just in funding purposes, it's once the student signs on, that's what triggers the funding. A student is signed into an early college experience or an IP experience, that triggers whatever funding source they're using.
And I think we have time probably for one more question. I know we had some in the previous section as well, but do you have any other questions before we talk about next steps? And if you think of a question later, you're always welcome to either email Kristen or Rebecca or myself or Amanda, and pretty much anyone will get you to the right person in order to answer. Oh, how are we recording completion of early college?
That is a great question. Are you referring to courses or program? So I'll go ahead and answer both. And Mark, if you can unmute and let me know or put in the chat, that'd be great. But in terms of
credits.
Credits, okay. So SCS will report, well, both AIRS and SCS will report the grades related to those classes. In SCS, it's a little bit, there's a little bit of a proxy situation going on where we're kind of making the assumption that the high school grade reported is the college grade. So that is another reason why AIRS is really a better source of truth, because that is actually the college grade that students will receive on their college record. So again, we are just now starting to really hone in on using AIRS and helping programs complete AIRS in a more accurate manner. So as this process unfolds, we'll have a lot more information about our credits. We have just really found that SCS wasn't quite capturing all the college information we needed. It really wasn't designed to do that. It was designed obviously to capture advanced coursework and make note of post-secondary credits, but not actual college credit itself and college grades, etc. So that's one reason why we're moving to that. As of right now for funding, we're funding after add drop. That may be something as we get a better sense from programs, because obviously course completion is really important. If you have a lot of students enrolled and they're not completing, that's going to become an issue. So as we fine tune this, there may be some adjustments made to funding around course completion, but as of right now, we are funding after add. I hope that answered the question.
Yes, thank you.
And then, I'm sorry, completing the 12 college credits. Again, that's another reason why we're excited to switch over to AIRS, because I think we have had more difficulty than you would imagine in establishing the students have completed their 12 credits. We have been doing it as proxy through SCS. We think because a lot of programs may not be reporting 04, so 03, we had some seniors not taking college classes, which didn't make sense to us. But when we switched over to looking at the data for advanced coursework, 90% of our early college students were in advanced coursework. So we know that, there's something going on there, and that, we feel pretty strongly that seniors are enrolled in college courses. And I'm sure there were some exceptions during COVID, but for the most part, we are assuming the majority of early college seniors by that point would be enrolled in college courses. And we're going to start looking more critically at the completing 12 credit, because it really is based on research, the minimum number that really is determines whether or not a student does make that jump onto college. So knowing that is a critical minimum number that a lot of programs have identified, it will continue to be an important number for us here at the state as well. And we know many of our students are getting many more than that, which is also really exciting.
So we can kind of look at it as the high schools are recording participants, and we're going to use AIRS to figure out completion rates.
Yeah, I think that's safe to say. I mean, we will continue to work with SCS and capture from their high school records, but yes, I think that's where we're headed. It seems to be, the data team has worked try to resolve this. And I think that's definitely the direction we're headed.
And then really quick, I just want to plug our next session is the final one of the series. And we're going to talk about how data reporting is tied to funding practices. And Cache will be helping us with that as well. And one other thing I just want to say is that Amanda and I have been working on some surveys and some interview questions with programs to talk about the data collection processes the past year. So please expect to hear from us later today, and then signing up for a time or completing a survey over the next week or so. All right, that's all.
Thank you everyone for coming this morning.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all. The recording and all of the information will be posted probably by the end of the day today, if not tomorrow, first thing in the morning. Thanks all.
Thank you, Kelly.
Everyone.
Kelly,
Thank
I'll send
you.
this right over to you. Thank you so much.